Welcome to In My Backyard with Jenna.
And Jody.
And today we're going to be talking about insects. And most people think of insects as pests. But it actually turns out, I don't know if you knew the statistic, that only 1/10 of 1% of all of the insects on the planet are actually considered pests. And so that's just a tiny amount. Tiny.
Tiny thing.
And when we think about it, we think about, all the things that bother us, mosquitoes and black flies, not to mention the things that eat our food crops and things like that. Well, all of those insects combined, all of those species are just a fraction of the number of insects on the planet. So today what we're going to be doing is looking at what you can find out about some insects right in your backyard, at the park in your neighborhood, and find the ones that interest you, that are interesting to look at, or interesting colors, and learn a little bit more about the insects that aren't pests. So first of all, do you know what an insect is?
Tell me more.
Well, it's interesting because you start talking to people about insects and they say, oh yeah, I've got an interesting spider to show you. Well, it turns out that spiders aren't insects.
They have 8 legs.
They have 8 legs, exactly.
8 legs.
And insects only have 6 legs.
Right.
That's one thing about them. Another one is that, and we're mostly talking about adult insects here. Actually, let's just talk only about adult insects. It makes it easier. Adult insects have 6 legs, and they always have 3 body parts. There's a head, the thorax in the middle, and the abdomen at the back. You can't always see all 3. If you think about it, when you have a ladybug, you don't really see 3 parts. You see one little, half of a sphere walking around, but they're all there. And so today we're going to be talking about what exactly makes us look at insects, why we're interested in insects, and how important they are. So to start off with, I have a couple of things here that have some... We have to stop for a second. There's a bug in my aspirator. I forgot I caught that.
Did you do this on purpose?
No, I forgot that I caught it last night. To make sure it worked.
Yeah.
It's a Japanese beetle.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, hold on.
Okay, so it works.
It works.
This looks very scientific.
Doesn't it though?
Doesn't
Yeah.
that look nice?
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. So insects have an exoskeleton. They have 6 legs, and they have 3 parts that make up their body. So if you think about a tick, for example, they only have 2 body parts and they have 8 legs. So they are not an insect.
Never knew that.
Yep. And then we have all of the different insects that are around that do have 6 legs, the ones we'll talk about now. And typically when people find out that I study insects, they say, oh, I had this black insect with white stripes on my back porch. What species is it? And one of the interesting things about that is that with all other kinds of wildlife, birds and mammals and things like that, you really can look at something and very quickly find out the species. Oh, it's a white-tailed deer, and that has a particular name and scientific name and so on. But with insects, there are so many of them. There are something like 1.7 million individual insects per human. So, and that's on the planet. 1 billion insects on the planet is what scientists estimate. And of that, they're all broken down into different kinds of groups. Well, if we wanted to get to species, which is the smallest group we could get to, it's really difficult. You would end up with really thick books, and you'd have to look at the number of spines on their back foot and things like that. So generally what I tend to do is just look at the big group, like is it a bee, is it an ant, is it a beetle? And that's an easier way to look at insects in your backyard. So we have a couple of things here. Ways to collect insects. One of them is a really simple insect net, and we'll use this in just a couple of minutes. What's nice about this insect net is it has a short handle, and it's important to be able to see through the netting on your insect net. Do you know why?
So you don't harm the bug?
That's one reason, absolutely. You want to be able to make sure that if you have a net that is just fabric that you can't see through, and you catch the insect that you're interested in looking at, you don't want to be doing this to wonder where it is in your insect net. The second reason is if you catch something that's a stinging insect, you want to be able to get it out of there before you get stung. So for example, if I use my technique and I get a wasp in here and I'm working maybe with a class of students, I want to be able to just let that wasp out of the net really easily, and I'll show you some of the techniques in a minute.
Excellent.
Another thing that we have here, and this is something that we made, and this is called an aspirator. Entomologists, which is someone that studies insects, have a smaller version of this that they typically use in the lab. It's a small, almost the size of maybe a pill bottle, and it's clear, and it's made of plastic or glass, and it has these 2 tubes. The way that this works is that we have the lid here, and there's a straw going through one, and then a piece of clear tubing. Now the straw has gauze over it. And the way that we did this, Basically, it's a really easy thing to make, and again, we'll show how to use it in a minute, but you're actually going to use your suction power with your lungs to suck a bug into the container. So if you want to hold that, Jody, you can hold it up so everybody can see. With a 5/8 inch drill bit, there were 2 holes drilled here, and that's because that is the diameter of a piece of this tubing, which you can get at any hardware store. And so you put this through. One of them will be the one that you put your mouth on to give the suction. The other will be the one that you suck the insect in with. What I did with this one at home was I used my hot glue gun to attach them, so there was no gap in air at all around here. Then you can see this is the one with the gauze, so if we chose which one we wanted to be our suction, let's say this is the one that I'm going to use to put my mouth on this end. I just take the piece of gauze and I taped it with Scotch tape on the other one around like this. Okay? And this is important because otherwise, if you're sucking an insect in through this tube, you don't want the insect to go into your mouth. So you have this little bit of gauze here to protect you from that. You want something with fairly small holes. This is cheesecloth. You don't want to use a screen because there are insects that are small enough to get through the screening. Not many, but there are. So this is cheesecloth with very, very small holes. So we put this over and then we tape it here. Okay? And then attach this whole thing together like this one was when we first looked at it. So this is the one that we'll be using today. We're going to go to the garden and we're going to see if we can collect some insects. One word of wisdom about collecting insects is that if you are going to collect live insects and look at them and then release them, it's best to have a book on hand so that you don't have to just remember what the insect looked like. So that then you can go to the internet. It's a great resource, but if you're going to go to the internet, it's best to really have a good picture in your mind of what that insect looked like before you do so. And there are some great insect guides out there. This is just one of many. This is the Peterson's Guide to Insects. So it's good to have a book like this handy so that when you get an insect either in your net or in your aspirator, you can then look in the book, and there are some nice pictures here that will then help you figure out, is it a beetle, is it a bee, is it a wasp, and so on. One thing I didn't mention, which is once you have it in your net, you might want to then have somewhere to put it. So let's say I get a grasshopper in my net. You can get any number of containers at any kind of store, or you can just use an empty spaghetti sauce can. And then you use your net and put maybe the cricket or the grasshopper in here, and then you can watch it for a little bit longer. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to move up to the garden, and we'll get some of these insect collecting devices working so that we can really get a look at how easy they are and how easy it is to start appreciating all of the insects in your backyard. So today what we're going to be doing is collecting some insects. Jody's got the insect net, which is called a sweep net, this particular kind of net, and she's got the collecting container, which again could be really anything. And I'm holding the aspirator. So the way that we want to use the sweep net, and I'll just show you real quickly, is if you're interested in collecting just about whatever you find in your backyard, at the park, you just kind of walk up to any kind of plants, and you're just going to sweep it gently across the plant material. And you will get, little bits of plant, but you're also going to get some little insects in there. And there are some tiny ones in there right now that we couldn't see on camera, but they're in there. So I will shake them loose, and we'll give Jody a try. Maybe on some different plants over here, we'll get something larger that we can see.
It doesn't even look like there's anything there.
It doesn't.
I'm going to go back to some of the thistle too.
Okay, and then once you get whatever it is, you kind of can flop the net over, and then without risk of them flying out, you can look in the net and see what you might have caught.
Looks like I need to practice.
It looks like you might need to practice a little bit more. Let's try over here.
Okay.
Let's see. I don't see a lot in there. Yep, there were just some tiny things over here. Oh, I see something right here. Right down here, I can see some movement. You can see it sort of underneath there.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see it?
That looks like a mean one.
I think it might be a beetle, actually.
Okay.
And sometimes you can go underneath because one of the ways that they like to go is under.
Oops.
And then you're just going to flop that net over and see if you got them.
I got a little one.
Little tiny one in there. Yep, there's a little tiny insect in there. It's very hard to see on camera, I realize. This actually might be one of those native pollinators that are so great to have in your garden. It looks like it might be a fly, has only 2 wings, and it's just tiny. So if we wanted to take a closer look at it, even though it is so tiny, we can do two things. One, we can use the aspirator. Oh, and there's something right here as well. So we can actually stick the aspirator right inside. If you kind of flip this net over, and as it flies about, what I do is I put my mouth on one end. Oh, did you? There he is.
Quick. There. Oh, beautiful. That's a really cute one.
And did he get all the way inside?
Yep. Oh, I think he did.
So if you noticed, I gave suction to the pink straw. Yep, he's in there. And then the clear one, we sucked him up. Because of the gauze in there, I didn't get him in my mouth. Oh, you know where he is. He's right on the side of the tubing. So having a nice clear glass like this can allow us to see him a little bit more closely.
And what do you think he is?
I think he's a fly of some sort. And it's interesting, he's got, or she, has some black and white striping on the abdomen. And what that is mimicry. So if you were a bird or some other kind of predator, another insect predator, you'd see that black and white striping and you'd say, whoa, that is going to sting me, I'm backing off. But this being a fly wouldn't have a stinger. But through the millions of years of evolution, these have ended up looking a lot like bees because they've learned that that's to their advantage. They can use that, and then other critters that would prey upon them otherwise stay away from them. And if we had a microscope or a magnifying glass, you would see that tiny little black and white or black and yellow striping on the abdomen of the insect. So Jody, I'm going to let this guy go.
That sounds great.
He can get back to his or her job of pollinating. And there he goes. Okay, so I caught this bug in the net. And if you want to go get that little insect collecting container, then we'll be able to look at this more closely. What I've caught in here, it's actually called a true bug. If you're going to talk to an entomologist, this will be the kind of insect that they say is the only kind you can really call a bug. It has a certain shape of body, and I know this is not a stinging insect, so I'm just going to take it out with my hand. Try to, anyway. He's crawling all around. This guy knows what I'm after. One thing I do sometimes is just put it right up against, yep, like that, and then pop it right in there. And then we close it up. Now, this insect, we may actually be able to get this out of my hand in a minute because it's not a stinging or biting insect. This particular kind of insect is a plant feeder. And so this one, I don't think you can see it through there, I'll get him out. They're in the order Hemiptera, so if you were using a bug book of any kind, this insect only has a piercing mouth part, and it uses it to suck plant juices out of a plant. Oh, it likes it in there. And there are some of these in the order Hemiptera that actually can feed on other insects, and they will be predatory. This particular one is a plant feeder, and it's in the group that we call Hemiptera because it has half of its wing is hard and crunchy like a beetle wing, and then the rear half of it is really, really thin and filmy like a wasp or a fly wing. Let me get him out of here. Come on, buddy. Okay, this thing is great, except he doesn't want to come out. There we go. Okay, and you can see, whoop, there he goes. Of course, that happened. All right, well, that guy's gone.
I
What'd
have
you
a
get?
grasshopperly type.
Oh, excellent.
He's green.
Oh, excellent. I wonder if we could see him better if we put him in the jar with the aspirator on it.
You want me to get that?
Yeah. Okay, so Jody was out with the net and she caught this nice insect. This insect looks like it is in the grasshopper family. This is in the order Orthoptera. Now the reason I can tell that is it has a really, really long back leg like a grasshopper with that really large jumping femur on it. This one is missing one of its legs, broke off maybe during capture, or maybe before that, maybe a predator tried to get it and it got away. Just with 5 legs instead of with 6. What's nice about these insects that is so interesting to watch through the summer season is that they never go through a pupa. What they do is that they just grow gradually. It's called incomplete metamorphosis. So at the beginning of the summer, you may find tiny little grasshoppers and crickets that don't really look fully like a grasshopper or cricket. It's hatched right out of the egg as a tiny version of what their adult form will be. And then throughout the summer, they will molt, and each time they molt, they look a little bit more like the adult form. So this one, if I could get it out without having it jump away, this one has wings that aren't fully developed yet, which tells me it's not an adult yet. It'll go through maybe 1 or 2 more molts before it reaches its adult stage. At that point, it'll have fully developed wings, and it'll be sexually mature and able to reproduce. Whether it's a male or female, I can't tell right now in the jar, but based on that, once it's an adult, it will be able to reproduce. And this is actually what we call a longhorn grasshopper because it has really, really long antennae. So that's what we've got here. Nice catch, Jody. So there's its really long antennae. And you can see it has nice compound eyes right there. They're green, they blend right in. This guy would use camouflage defense. It really doesn't have any other kind of defense. And this insect has chewing mouth parts, which is one of the reasons that they can be such bad agricultural pests in farming communities, because they chew in every stage of their life. When they are what's called a nymph, which is before they reach adulthood, they are a chewing insect. Then they're a chewing insect all the stages in between, and then they're a chewing insect as an adult. So if I could get him out of here, we could see that the fact that he doesn't, or she doesn't, have fully developed wings yet. They're just very small.
Aren't they beautiful?
They are beautiful, just fascinating. Some insects, cool. Some insects like this have what are called, in addition to compound eyes, have simple eyes, which are just able to perceive light and don't actually form an image.
And Lee has trained this grasshopper. And this one is either a carpenter or a bumble.
Oh,
I'm not
excellent.
sure.
I can never tell.
But it's a furry one.
Yep. All right, let's get it in here because that'll be
Okay.
safer for it and us.
And it wants to come out. So.
Yeah. Okay, you're just gonna pop it right in.
It feels so weird.
You want to flip the jar up so that it will fly up.
Okay, so Jody has become insect collector extraordinaire. We can't really see this very well, but it looks to me to be a small bee, not as big as a bumblebee. And one of the things to remember about this kind of insect, or I'll flip it up, maybe it'll come to the top, they like the sun. One of the things to remember about this kind of insect is that this does go through a complete metamorphosis with a pupa stage. So this is its full-grown adult size, and it will not get any bigger. This insect is a pollinator. All of what looks like hair on the outside of its body actually isn't at all. What it is actually an extension of its exoskeleton. So you couldn't pluck it out like you could a hair on a mammal. It's an extension of the exoskeleton that comes off, and it's actually there, an adaptation for collecting pollen and nectar. Well, nectar in its inside, but pollen on the outside of the insect. So this is a great thing to find in a home garden because we know that there haven't been a lot of pesticides used here. There's a nice, thriving insect here. He looks very healthy, or she. And this particular kind of insect, I'm not sure what species it is, but I do know that it's definitely a bee. It has 4 wings, it's fuzzy, and did you find it on a flower?
I did.
Great.
I have another.
You have another. What is it?
It looks like, it's not a dragonfly, it's one of the other ones.
Oh, a damselfly.
A damselfly.
Great, let's try
yes.
and put it, we'll let the...
And we have a flower with it.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay, let's try
Okay.
and get the damselfly in here.
Oops.
Is it going up?
Yep.
Did it go in?
Is it on your side? I don't know.
I think it went in.
Did it?
Yeah, it went in.
Wonderful.
Okay, so a dragonfly, I wish that the camera could see through here. The dragonfly has wings that are outstretched like an airplane. And the damselfly, when it's at rest, has its wings folded back right over its abdomen. So they hold it right back, the wings. And they're much smaller usually, a damselfly is. These have aquatic larvae. I don't know if you'll be able to see in there at all. These have aquatic larvae, so they can actually travel quite far. I've seen dragonfly and damselfly adults that will come out and be on top of Mount Monadnock, for example, or on top of Gap Mountain, places like that. So it doesn't mean that you're going to find the adults in an aquatic location, but their nymphs are aquatic, so that they develop. It sometimes takes several years for a dragonfly or damselfly to develop in the water, and then they will come out, rest on a bark of a tree, on a rock, and emerge as their adult form. As you can see, in just a few short minutes, 15 or so out here on this beautiful day, just in a backyard in the Monadnock region, we were able to find 4 different, really very significantly different kinds of insects. We found a grasshopper, which is in one particular order called Orthoptera. We found a true bug with those half crunchy wings and half really membranous. We found a bee, and we found a damselfly. So those are all really different kinds of insects right here in your backyard. So I would encourage you, if you're interested at all in finding out more about insects, there's some great books. This one is called Attracting Native Pollinators, and it's a wonderful book that you can find. There's also many different kinds of insect guides, insect collectors that you can find. This one still has the damselfly in it. And simple things that you can make, like this aspirator or an insect net that you can use right in your backyard to collect things. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that Jody and I are very interested in having people write in. We have an email account set up just for the show. It's in my backyard, ch8 for channel 8 at gmail.com. And if you have ideas on what you'd like to cover, if you have any questions for us, or if you're interested in being on the show, send us an email and we'll let you know.
Sounds great. So we'll see you next time in my backyard.